Chapter 17. Dr. Seward's Diary continued. When we arrived at the Berkeley Head Hotel, Van Helsing found a telegram waiting for him. "I'm coming up by train. Jonathan at Whitby. Important news. Minna Harker." The professor was delighted. "Ah, that's wonderful, Madam Mina," he said. "Pearl among women. She arrived, but I cannot stay. She must go to your house, friend John. You must meet her at the station. Telegraph her en route, so that she may be prepared." When the wire was dispatched, he had a cup of tea. Over it, he told me of a diary kept by Jonathan Harker when abroad, and gave me the typewritten copy of it, also of Mrs. Harker's diary of Whitby. "Take these," he said, "and study them well. When I have returned, you will be master of all the facts, and we can then better enter our inquisition. Keep them safe, for there is in them much a treasure. You will need all your faith, even you who have had such an experience as today. What is here told?" He lay his hand heavily and gravely on the packet of papers as he spoke. "May be the beginning of the end to you and me and many another, or it may be the sound of the knell for the undead who walk the earth. Read all, I pray you, with an open mind, and if you can add in any way to the story here told, do so, for it is all important. You have kept diary of all these things so strange, is it not so? Yes. Then we shall go through these together when that we meet." He then made ready for his departure, and shortly after drove off to Liverpool Street. I took my way of Paddington, where I arrived about 15 minutes before the train came in. The crowd melted away after the bustling commotion of arrival platforms, and I was beginning to feel uneasy lest I might miss my guest, when a sweet-faced, dainty-looking girl stepped up to me, and after a quick glance said, "Dr. Stewart, is it not?" "Are you Mrs. Harker?" I answered at once, whereupon she held out her hand. "I knew you from the description of poor dear Lucy, but—" She stopped suddenly, and a quick blush overspread her face. The blush that rose to my own cheeks somehow set us both at ease, for it was a tacit answer to her own. I got her luggage, which included a typewriter, and we took the Underground to the Fenchurch Street, after I had sent a wire to my housekeeper to have the sitting room and bedroom prepared at once for Mrs. Harker. In due time we arrived. She knew, of course, that the place was a lunatic asylum, but I could see that she was unable to repress a slight shudder when we entered. She told me that, if she might, she would have come presently to my study, and she had much to say. So here I am finishing my entry in my phonograph diary whilst I await her. As yet I have not had a chance to looking at my papers which Van Helsing left with me, though they lie open before me. I must get her interested in something, so that I may have an opportunity of reading them. She does not know how precious time is, or what task we have in hand. I must be careful not to frighten her. She is. Minna Harker's Journal, 29th September. After I had tidied myself, I went to Dr. Seward's study. At the door I paused a moment, for I thought I heard him talking with someone. As, however, he had pressed me to be quick, I knocked at the door, and on his calling out, "Come in," I entered. To my intense surprise, there was no one with him. He was quite alone, and on the table opposite him was that which I knew as the description to be a phonograph. I had never seen one before, and was much interested. "I hope I did not keep you waiting," I said, "but I stayed at the door as I heard you talking and thought you were with someone." "Oh," he replied with a smile, "I was only entering my diary." "Your diary?" I asked him in surprise. "Yes," he answered, "I keep it in this." As he spoke, he laid his hand on the phonograph. I felt quite excited over it, and blurted out, "Why, this beats even shorthand. May I hear it say something?" "Certainly," he replied with electricity, and he stood up and put it to the train speaking. Then he paused, and trouble looked over his face. "The fact is," he began awkwardly, "I only keep my diary in it. and that is almost entirely about cases, and it may be awkward. That is, I mean... He stopped, and I tried to help him out of his embarrassment. You helped to attend dear Lucy at the end. Let me hear how she died. For all that I know of her, I shall be very grateful. She was very, very dear to me. To my surprise, he answered, and with a horror-struck look in his face. Tell you of her death? Not for the wide world. Why not? I asked, for some grave, terrible feeling was coming over me. Again he paused, and I could see that he was trying to invent an excuse. At length he stammered out. You see, I do not know how to put out the particular part of the diary. Even while he was speaking, the idea dawned upon him, and he said, with unconscious simplicity in a different voice, with which he had the naivety of a child, That's quite true, upon my honor. Honest Injun. I could not but smile, at which he grimaced. I gave myself away that time, he said. But do you know that, although I have kept the diary for months past, it never once struck me how I was going to find any particular part of it in the case I wanted to look it up. By this time, my mind was made up that the diary of a doctor who attended Lucy might be something to add to the sum of our knowledge with a terrible being, I said boldly. The Dr. Stewart, you had better let me copy it out for you on my typewriter. He grew to a positively deathly pallor as he said, No. For all the world, I wouldn't let you know that terrible story. Then it was terrible. My intuition was right. For a moment I thought, and my eyes ranged the room, unconsciously looking for something or some opportunity to aid me. I lit on a great batch of typewriting on the table. His eyes caught the look of mine, and without me thinking, followed the direction. And they saw the parcel, he realized the meaning. You do not know me, I said. When you have read those papers, my own diary and my husband's also, which I have typed, you will know me better. I have not faltered in giving every thought of my own heart in this case, but of course you do not know me yet, and I must not expect you to trust me so far. He is certainly a man of noble nature. Poor dear Lucy was right about him. He stood up and opened a large drawer, in which were arranged in order a number of hollow cylinders of metal covered in dark wax. He said, You are quite right. I did not trust you because I do not know you. But I know you now. I know you know. Let me say that I should have known you long ago. I know that Lucy told me of you. She told me of you, too. May I make only the atonement in my power. Take these cylinders and hear them. The first half-dozen of them are personal to me, and they will not horrify you. Then you will know me better. Dinner will then be ready. In the meantime, I shall read over some of the documents and shall be better able to understand certain things. He carried the photograph himself to my sitting room and adjusted it for me. Now I shall learn something pleasant, I am sure, for it will tell me the other side of a true love episode, of which I know only one side already. Dr. Seward's Diary, 29th September. I was so absorbed in that wonderful diary of Jonathan Harker and that other of his wife that I let time run on without me thinking. Mrs. Harker was not down when the maid came to announce dinner, so I said, She is possibly tired. Let dinner wait an hour. And I went on with my work. I had just finished Mrs. Harker's diary when she came in. She looked sweetly pretty and very sad, and her eyes were flushed with crying. This somehow moved me much. Of late I'd had cause for tears, God knows, but the relief of them was denied me, and now the sight of those sweet eyes, brightened with recent tears, went straight to my heart. So I said, as gently as I could, I greatly fear I have distressed you. Oh no, not distressed me, she replied, but I have been more touched than I can say by your grief. That is a wonderful machine, but it is cruelly true. It told me, in its very own tones, the anguish of your heart. It was like a soul crying out to Almighty God. No one must hear them spoken ever again. See, I have tried to be useful. I have copied out the words on my typewriter. and none ever need hear your heart beats as I did. No one ever need know, shall ever know, I said in a low tone. She laid her hand on mine, and said very gravely, Alas, but they must. Must? But why? I asked. Because it is part of a terrible story, a part of dear Lucy's death, and all that led to it. Because in the struggle which we have before us to rid the earth of this terrible monster, we must have all the knowledge and all the help we can get. I think that the cylinders which gave you the contained more than you intended me to know, but I can see that there are on your record many lights to a dark mystery. You will let me help, will you not? I know all up to a certain point, and I see already, through your diary only took me to 7th September, how poor Lucy was beset, and how terrible doom of being wrought out. Jonathan and I have been working day and night since Professor Van Helsing saw us. He has gone to Whitby to get more information, and he will be here tomorrow to help us. We need have no secrets among us. Working together and with some absolute trust, we can surely be stronger than if some of us were in the dark. She looked at me so appealingly, and at the same time manifested such courage and resolution in all her bearing, that I at once gave in to her wishes. You shall, I said, do as you like in the matter. God forgive me if I do wrong. There are terrible things yet to learn of, but if you have so far travelled on the poor road to Lucy's death, you will not be content, I know, to remain in the dark. Nay, the end, the very end, may give you a gleam of peace. Come, there is dinner. We must keep one another strong for what is before us. We have a cruel and dreadful task. When you have eaten, you shall leave the rest, and I shall answer any questions you ask. If there be anything which you do not understand, though it was apparent to us who were present. Mina Harker's Journal, 29th September. After dinner, I came with Dr. Stewart to his study. He brought back the photograph from my room, and I took my typewriter. He placed me in a comfortable chair and arranged the photograph so that I could touch it without getting up, and showed me how to stop it in case I wanted to pause. Then he very thoughtfully took a chair with his back to me so that I may take as free as possible, and began to read. I put the forked metal to my ears and listened. When the terrible story of Lucy's death and all that followed was done, I lay back in my chair powerless. Fortunately, I am not of the fainting disposition. When Dr. Seward saw me, he jumped up with a horrified exclamation and hurriedly taking a case bottle from the cupboard, gave me some brandy, which in a few minutes was somewhat restored me. My brain was all in a whirl, and only that there came through the multitude of horrors a holy ray of light that my dear, dear Lucy was at last at peace. I do not think I could have borne it without making a scene. It was all so wild and mysterious and strange that if I had not known Jonathan's experience in Transylvania, I could not have believed. As it was, I didn't know what to believe, and so got out of my difficulty by attending to something else. I took the cover off of the typewriter and said to Dr. Seward, Let me type this all out. We must be ready for Dr. Van Helsing when he comes. I have sent a telegram to Jonathan to come here when he arrives in London from Whitby. And all this matter dates are everything, and I think if we get all material ready and have every item in the chronological order, we shall have done much. You tell me that Lord Goldering and Mr. Morris are coming soon? Let us be able to tell them when they come. He accordingly set my phonograph at the slow pace, and I began to typewrite from the beginning of the 7th cylinder. I used manifold, so that it took 3 copies of the diary just as I had done with all the rest. It was late, and when I got through, but Dr. Seward went about his work of going on his round of the patients. When he had finished he came back and sat near me, reading, so that I did not feel too lonely whilst I worked. How good and thoughtful he is. The world seems full of good men, even if there are monsters in it. Before I left him, I remembered what Jonathan put in his diary of the professor's perturbation at reading something in an evening paper at the station of Exeter. So seeing that Dr. Seward keeps his newspapers, I borrowed that files from the Westminster Gazette and the Pall Mall Gazette and took them to my room. I remember how much the Daily Graph and the Whitby Gazette, of which I had made cuttings, helped us to understand the terrible events at Whitby when Count Dracula landed. So I shall look through the evening papers since then, and perhaps I shall get some new light. I'm not sleepy, and the work will help keep me quiet. Dr. Seward's Diary, 30th September. Mr. Harker arrived at 9 o'clock. He had got his wife's wire just before starting. He is uncommonly clever, if one can judge from his face, and full of energy. If his journal be true, and judging by one's own wonderful experiences, it must be, he is also a man of great nerve. That going down to the vault a second time was a remarkable piece of daring. After reading his account of it, I prepared to meet a good specimen of manhood, but hardly the quiet, business-like gentleman who came here today. Later, after lunch, Harker and his wife went back to their room, and I passed a while ago. I heard the click of the typewriter. They are hard at it. Mrs. Harker says that they are knitting together a chronology order of every scrap of evidence they have. Harker has got the letters between the consignee of the boxes of Whitby and the carriers of London who took charge of them. He is now reading his wife's transcript of my diary. I wonder what they make of it. Here he is. Strange that it had never struck me that the very next house might be the Count's hiding place. Goodness knows that we had clues from the conduct of the patient Renfield. The bundle of letters relating to the purchase of the house were with the transcript. Oh, if we had only had them earlier, we might have saved poor Lucy. Stop. That is the madness lies. Harker has gone back, and again collating his material. He says that by dinner time they will be able to show the whole connected narrative. He thinks that in the meantime I should see Renfield, as hitherto he has been sort of indexed to the coming and going of the Count. I hardly see this yet, but when I get to the dates I suppose I shall. What a good thing that Mrs. Harker put the cylinders into type. We could have never found the dates otherwise. I found Renfield sitting placidly in his room with his hands folded, smiling benignly. At the moment he seemed as sane as anyone I ever saw. I sat down and talked with him on a lot of subjects, all of which he seemed naturally. He then, of his own accord, spoke of going home, a subject he has never mentioned, to my knowledge, during his sojourn here. In fact, he spoke quite confidently of getting his discharge at once. I believe that, had I not had the chat with the Harker and read the letters and the dates of his outbursts, I should have been prepared to sign him for a brief time of observation. As it is, I am darkly suspicious. All those outbreaks were in some way linked to the proximity of the Count. What, then, does this absolute content mean? Can it be that his instinct satisfied as to the vampire's ultimate triumph? Stay, he is himself Zoophagous, and in his wild ravings outside the chapel door of the deserted house he always spoke of Master. This all seems confirmation of our idea. However, after a while I came away. My friend is just a little too sane at present to make it safe to probe him too deep with questions. He might begin to think. And then... So I came away. I mistrust these quiet moods of his, so I have given the attendant a hint to look closely after him, and to have a straight waistcoat ready, just in case of need. Jonathan Harker's Journal, 29th September, in train to London. When I received Mr. Billingham's courteous message that he would give me any information in his power, I thought it best to go down to Whitby and make on the spot such inquiries as I wanted. It was now my object to trace that horrid cargo of the Count's to its place in London. Later we may be able to deal with it. Billingham Jr., a nice lad, met me at the station and brought me to his father's house, where they had decided that I must stay the night. They were hospitable, with true Yorkshire hospitality, give everything and leave him free to do as he likes. They all knew that I was busy and that my stay was short, and Mr. Billington was ready in his office with all the papers concerning the consignment of the boxes. It gave me almost a turn to see again one of the letters which I had seen on the Count's table before I knew his diabolical plans. Everything had been carefully thought out, and done systematically and with precision. He seemed to have been prepared for every obstacle which might be placed by accident in the way of his intentions being carried out. To use an Americanism, he had taken no chances, and the absolute accuracy with which his instructions were fulfilled was simply the logical result of his care. I saw the invoice and took note of it. 50 cases of common earth to be used for experimental purposes. I also got the copy of the letter to Carter Pearson, and the reply. Of both of these I got copies. This was all the information Mr. Billington could give me, so I went to the port and saw the Coast Guards, the customs officer, and the harbor master. They had all something to say about the strange entry of the ship, which is already taking its place in local tradition, but no one could add to the simple description. 50 cases of common earth. Then I saw the station master, who kindly put to me the communication with the men who had actually received the boxes. Their tally was exact with the list. They had nothing to add except that the boxes were main and mortal heavy, and the shifting of them was dry work. One of them added that it was hard lines, that there weren't any gentlemen, such as yourself, squire, to show sort of appreciation of their efforts in liquid form. Another put in the writer that the thirst from the generated was such that even the time which had elapsed had not completely allayed it. Needless to say, I took care before leaving to lift forever and adequately this source of reproach. 30th September. The station master was good enough to give me a line of his old companion, the station master at King's Cross, so that when I arrived there in the morning I was able to ask him about the arrival of the boxes. He, too, put me at once in communication with the proper officials, and I saw that their tally was correct with the original invoice. The opportunities of acquiring an abnormal thirst had been here limited. A noble use of them had, however, been made, and again I was compelled to deal with the result in an ex post facto manner. From thence I went to Carter Peterson's central office, where I met with the utmost courtesy. They looked up the transaction in their daybook and letterbook, and at once telephoned their King's Cross office for more details. By good fortune, the men who did the teaming were waiting for work, and the official at once sent them over, sending also by them one by one the waybill and the papers connected with the delivery of the boxes to Carfax. Here again I found the tally agreeing exactly. The carrier's men were able to supplement the podacity of the written words with few details. These were, I shortly found, connected almost solely with the dusty nature of the job, and of the consequent thirst engendered in all operators. On my affording an opportunity, through the medium of the currency of the realm, of allaying at the later period of the beneficial evil, one of the men remarked, "That is, governor, the rummiest I was ever in. Blind, but it ain't been touched since 100 years. There's a dust that's thick in that place that you might have stepped on it without hurting your bones. That place was neglected that you might be smelled old Jerusalem in that. But the old chapel, that took the cake, that did. Me and my mate, we thought we wouldn't never get out of it quick enough. Well, I wouldn't take less than a quid a moment to stay there after dark." Having been in the house, I could well believe him, but if he knew what I knew, he would, I think, have raised his terms. One thing I am now satisfied, that all the boxes which arrived at Whitby from Varna and the Demeter were safely deposited in the old chapel at Carfax. There should be 50 of them there, unless any have been since removed, as from Dr. Seward's diary, I fear. I shall try to see the carter who took away the boxes from Carfax when Renfield attacked them, but following up this clue we may yet learn a good deal. Later. Mina and I have worked all day. We have put all the papers into order. Mina Harker's Journal, September 30th. I'm so glad that I hardly know how to contain myself. It is, I suppose, the reaction from the haunting fear which I had, that this terrible affair and the reopening of the old wound might act detrimentally on Jonathan. I saw him leave Whitby with as brave a face as I could, but I was sick with apprehension. The effort has, however, done him good. He is never so resolute, never so strong, never so full of volcanic energy as present. It is just as that, dear Professor Van Helsing said. He is true grit. He improves under strain that would kill a weaker nature. He came back full of life and hope and determination. We have got everything in order for tonight. I feel myself quite wild with excitement. I suppose one ought to pity anything hunted as a count. That is just it. This thing is not human. Not even beast. To read Dr. Seward's account of poor Lucy's death and what followed is enough to dry up the springs of pity in one's heart. Later, Lord Godalming and Mr. Morris arrived earlier than we expected. Dr. Seward was out on business and had taken Jonathan with him, so I had to see them. It was to me a painful meeting, for it brought back all poor dear Lucy's hopes of only a few months ago. Of course, they had heard Lucy speak of me, and it seemed that Dr. Van Helsing, too, had been quite blowing my trumpet, as Mr. Morris expressed it. Poor fellows, neither of them were aware that I know all about the proposals they made to Lucy. They did not quite know what to say or do, as they were ignorant of the amount of my knowledge, so they had to keep on neutral subjects. However, I thought the matter over, and came to the conclusion that the best thing I could do would be to post them in the fairs right up to date. I knew from Dr. Seward's diary that they had been at Lucy's death, her real death, and that I need not fear to betray any secrets before time. So I told them, as well as I could, that I had read all the papers and the diaries, and that my husband and I, having typewritten them, had just finished putting them all in order. I gave them each a copy to read in the library. When Lord Godalming got his and turned it over, "It does make a pretty good pile," he said. "Did you write all of this, Mrs. Harker?" I nodded, and he went on. "I don't quite see the drift of it, but you people are so good and are all kind, and having been working earnestly and so energetically, that all I can do is to accept your ideas and blindfold and try to help you. I've had one lesson already in accepting facts that should make a man humble to the last hour of his life. Besides, I know you loved my poor Lucy." Here he turned away and covered his face in his hands. I could hear the tears in his voice. Mr. Morris, with instinctive delicacy, just laid a hand for a moment on his shoulder, then simply walked out of the room. I suppose there is something in woman's nature that makes a man free to break down before her and express his feelings on a tender or emotional side without feeling it derogatory to his manhood. For when Lord Godalming found himself alone with me, he sat down on the sofa and gave way utterly and openly. I sat down beside him and took his hand. I hope he didn't think forward of me, and if he thinks that on it afterwards he will never have such a thought. There I wrong him. I know he never will. He is too true a gentleman. I said to him, for I could not see that heart was breaking, "I loved dear Lucy, and I know what she was to you, and what you were to her. She and I were like sisters. Now she is gone. Will you not let me be like a sister to you in your trouble? I know what sorrows you have had, though I cannot measure the depth of them. If sympathy and pity can help you in your affliction, won't you let me be some of a little service, for Lucy's sake?" In an instant the poor dear fellow was overwhelmed with grief. It seemed to me that that he had of late been suffering in silence found a vent at once. He grew quite hysterical, and raising his open hands beat his palms together in a perfect agony of grief. He stood up, then sat down, and the tears rained down his cheeks. I felt an infinite pity for him, and opened my arms unthinkingly. With a sob he laid his head on my shoulder, and then cried like a wearied child, whilst he shook with emotion. We women have something of the mother in us that makes us rise to smaller matters when the mother spirit is invoked. I felt this big, sorrowing man's head resting on me, as though it were that of a baby that some day may lie in my bosom, and I stroked his hair as though he were my own child. I never thought at that time how strange it all was. After a little bit his sobs ceased, and he raised himself with an apology, though he made no disguise of his emotion. He told me that for days and nights past, weary days and sleepless nights, he had been unable to speak to anyone, as a man must speak in his time of sorrow. There was no woman whose sympathy could be given to him, or with whom, owing his own terrible circumstances with which his sorrow was surrounded, he could speak freely. I know now how I suffered, he said, as he dried his eyes. But I do not know even yet, and none other can ever know, how much your sweet sympathy has meant to me today. I shall know better in time, and believe that, though I am not ungrateful now, my gratitude will grow with my understanding. You will let me be like a brother. You will not, for all our lives, for dear Lucy's sake. For dear Lucy's sake, I said with clasped hands. Aye, and for your own sake, he added. If a man's esteem and gratitude are ever worth the winning, you have won mine today. If ever the future should bring you in a time when there needs a man's help, believe me, you will not call in vain. God grant that no such time may ever come to you or break the sunshine of your life. But if it should ever come, promise me that you will let me know. He was so earnest, and his sorrow was so fresh that I felt it would comfort him, so I said, I promise. As I came along the corridor, I saw Mr. Morris looking out the window. He turned as he heard my footsteps. How is Art? He said. And noticing my red eyes, he went on. I see you've been comforting him. Poor old fellow, he needs it. No one but a woman can help a man when he has trouble of the heart, and he had no one to comfort him. He bore his own trouble so bravely that my heart bled for him. I saw the manuscript in his hand, and I knew that he had read it he would realize how much I knew. So I said to him, I wish I could comfort all who suffer from the heart. Will you let me be your friend, and will you come to me for comfort when you need it? You will know later on why I speak. He saw that I was in earnest, and stooping took my hand, raised it to his lips, and kissed it. It seemed but poor comfort to so brave and unselfish a soul, and impulsively I bent over and kissed him. Tears rose in his eyes, and there was a momentary choking in his throat, and he said quite calmly, Little girl, you will never regret that true heart and kindness, so long as you ever live. Then he went into the study to his friend. Little girl, the very words he used to Lucy, and oh, he proved himself a friend. Chapter 18. Dr. Seward's Diary. 30 September. I got home at 5 o'clock and found Godalming and Morris had not only arrived, but had already studied the transcript of the various diaries and letters which Harker and his wonderful wife had made and arranged. Harker had not yet returned from his visit to the carrier's men, of whom Dr. Hennessy had written me. Mrs. Harker gave us a cup of tea, and I can honestly say that, for the first time since I have lived it, this old house seemed like a home. When we had finished, Mrs. Harker said, Dr. Seward, may I ask you a favor? I want to see your patient, Mr. Renfield. Do let me see him. What you have said of him in your diary interests me so much. She looked so appealing and so pretty that I could not refuse her, and there was no possible reason why I should, so I took the lady with me. When I went into the room, I told the man that the lady would like to see him, to which he simply answered, Why? She is going through the house and wants to see everyone in it, I answered. Oh, very well, he said. Let her come in, by all means. But just wait a moment while I tidy up the place. His method of tidying was peculiar. He simply swallowed all the flies and spiders in the boxes before I could stop it. It was quite evident that he feared, or was jealous of, some interference. When he had got through his disgusting task, he said cheerfully, Let the lady come in. And he sat down on the edge of his bed, with his head down, but his eyelids raised so that he could see her as she entered. For a moment I thought that he might have some homicidal intent. I remembered how quiet he was just before he attacked me in my own study, and I took care to stand where I could seize him at once if he attempted to make a spring at her. She came into the room with an easy gracefulness which would once command the respect of any lunatic, for easiness is one of the qualities most mad people respect. She walked over to him and smiled pleasantly, held out her hand. "Good evening, Mr. Renfield," she said. "You see, I know of you, for Dr. Stewart has told me of you." He made no immediate reply, but eyed her all over intently, with a set frown on his face. The look gave way to one of wonder, which emerged in doubt, then to intense astonishment. He said, "You're not the girl the doctor wants to marry, are you? You can't be, for she's dead." Mrs. Harker smiled sweetly, then replied, "Oh, no. I have a husband of my own to whom I was married before I ever saw Dr. Seward, or he me. I'm Mrs. Harker." "Then what are you doing here?" "My husband and I are staying on a visit with Dr. Stewart." "Then don't stay." "But why not?" I thought that this style of conversation might not be pleasant to Miss Harker, any more than it was to me, so I joined in. "How did you know I wanted to marry anyone?" His reply was simply and contemptuous, given the pause in which he turned his eyes from Miss Harker to me, instantly turning them back. "What an asinine question." "I don't see that at all, Mr. Renfield," said Mrs. Harker, at once championing me. He replied to her with such courtesy and respect as he had shown contempt to me. "You will, of course, understand, Mrs. Harker, that when a man is loved and honored as our host is, everything regarding him is of the interest of our little community. Dr. Seward is loved not only by his household and his friends, but even by his patients, who, being some of them hardly in a mental institution, are apt to distort causes and effects. Since I myself have been an inmate of a lunatic asylum, I cannot but notice that the sophisticate tendencies of some of the inmates lean towards the errors of non cause or ingrator delici. I positively opened my eyes to this new development. Here was my pet lunatic, the most pronounced of his type that I had ever met, talking elemental philosophy with the manner of a polished gentleman. I wondered if it was Mrs. Harker's presence which had touched some chord of his memory, if this new phase was spontaneous, or in any way due to her unconscious influence. She must have had some rare gift or power. We continued to talk for some time, and, seeing that he was seemingly quite reasonable, she ventured, looking at me questioningly as she began to lead him on his favorite topic. I was again astonished, for he addressed himself to the question with the impartiality of the completest sanity. He even took himself as an example when he mentioned certain things. "Why, I myself is an instance of a man who had a strange belief. Indeed, it was no wonder that my friends were alarmed and insisted on putting me under control. I used to fancy that life was a positive and perpetual entity, and that by consuming a magnitude of live things, no matter how low on the scale of creation, one might indefinitely prolong life. At times I held the belief so strongly that I actually tried to take human life. The doctor here will bear me out that on one occasion I tried to kill him for the purpose of strengthening my vital powers by the assimilation with my own body of his life through the medium of his blood, relying, of course, on the scriptural phase, for the blood is the life. Though indeed the vendor of a certain asylum has vulgarized the truism of the points of contempt. Isn't that true, Doctor?" I nodded assent, for I was so amazed that I hardly knew what I ought to say or think. It was hard to imagine that I had seen him eat up his spiders and flies not 5 minutes before. Looking at my watch, I saw that I should go to the station to meet Van Helsing, so I told Mrs. Harker that it was time to leave. She came at once, after saying pleasantly to Mr. Renfield, "Goodbye, and I do hope that I see you often under auspices pleasanter than to yourself." To which, in my astonishment, he replied, Goodbye, my dear. I pray God I never see your sweet face again. May he bless and keep you. I went to the station to meet Van Helsing. I left the boys behind me. Poor Art seemed to be more cheerful than he's been since Lucy first took ill, and Quincy is more like his own bright self than he was for many a long day. Van Helsing stepped from the carriage with an eager nimbleness of a boy. He saw me at once and rushed up to me, saying, "Ah, friend John, how goes well?" "Well, so I have been busy, for I come here to stay if need be. All affairs are settled with me, and I have much to tell." "Madam Mina is with you?" "Yes, and her so fine husband? And Arthur and my friend Quincy? Are they here too? Good." As I drove to the house, I told him what had passed, and how my own diary had come to be of some sort of use through Mrs. Harker's suggestion, at which the professor interrupted me. "Ah, that wonderful Mina. She has a man's brain, a brain that a man should have if he were such gifted, and a woman's heart. The good God fashioned her for a purpose, believe me, and when he made that such a good combination. Friend John, up to now, fortune has made us woman of us all to help us. After tonight, she must not have to do with such terrible affair. It is not good that she run the risk so great. We men are determined, nay, are we not pledged, to destroy this monster, but it is no part for a woman. If she be not harmed, her heart may fall in her so much, and so many horrors that hereafter she may suffer, both in waking, from her nerves, and in sleep of her dreams. Besides, she is a young woman, and not long married. There may be other things to think of for some time, if not now. You tell me she has wrote all, then all must consult with us. But tomorrow she is goodbye to the work, and we go alone." I agreed heartily with him, and then I told him of what we found in the absence of the house which Dracula had bought was the very next to my own. He was amazed, and with great concern seemed to come from him. "Oh, that we had known that before," he said, "for then we might have reached him in time to save poor Lucy. However, the milk that is spilt cries not out afterwards, as you say. We shall not think of that, but go on our own way to the end." And then he fell into a silence that lasted until we entered my own gateway. Before we went to prepare for dinner, he said to Mrs. Harker, "I am told, Madam Mina, by my friend John, that you and your husband have put it up in the exact order of things that have been, up to this moment." "Not up to this moment, Professor," she said impulsively, "but up to this morning." "But why not up to now? We have hitherto how good light in all little things that have been made. We have told our secrets, and yet no one has told it the worst of it." Mrs. Harker began to blush, and taking a paper from her pocket, she said, "Dr. Van Helsing, will you read this and tell me if it must go in? It is my record of today. I too have seen the need to putting down the present everything, however trivial. But there is little in this except what is personal. Must it go in?" The professor read over it gravely, and handed it back, saying, "It need not go in if you do not wish it, but I pray that it may. It can but make your husband love you more, and all us, your friends, more honor you, as well as more esteem and love." She took it back with another blush and a bright smile. "And so now, up to this hour, all the records have been complete." The professor took away one copy to study after dinner, and before our meeting, which is fixed at 9 o'clock. The rest of us have already read everything, so when we meet in the study we shall be informed as to the facts, and can arrange our own plan of battle to this terrible and mysterious enemy. Mina Harker's Journal, 30th September. When we met with Dr. Seward's study 2 hours after dinner, which had been at 6 o'clock, we unconsciously formed a sort of committee or board. Professor Van Helsing took the head of the table, to which Dr. Seward motioned him as he came into the room. He made me sit next to him on his right, and acted as if I was his secretary. Jonathan sat next to me. Opposite of us were Lord Godalming and Dr. Seward and Mr. Morse. Lord Godalming me next to the professor and Dr. Seward the center. The professor said, "I may, I suppose, take it that we are all acquainted with the facts that are in these papers." We all expressed assent, and he went on. "And then it were, I think, good that I tell you something of the kind of enemy with which we have to deal. I shall then make known to you something of the history of this man, which has been ascertained to me. So we can then discuss how we shall act, and can take our measure according. There are such things as vampires, some of us as evidence that they exist. Even had we not proof of our own unhappy experience, the teachings and the records of the past give proof to the same peoples. I admit that at first I was skeptic. Were it not that through the long years I have trained myself to keep an open mind, I could not have believed until such time the fact of my ear. See, I prove. Alas, had I known that at first what I know now, nay, had I even guessed at him, one so precious life had been spared to the others, of which who did love her. But that is gone, and we must now work so other souls perish not, what we can save. The Nosferatu do not lie like the bee when he stings once. He is only stronger, and being stronger, have yet more power to work evil. The vampire which is among us is so himself so strong in person of 20 men. He is of cunning more than mortal, and his cunning be the growth of ages. He have still the aids of necromancy, which is, in his etymology imply, divination by the dead, and all the dead that he can come nigh are him to command. He is brute, and more than brute. His devil is callous, and the heart of him is not. He can, with limitations, appear at will and where, and in any forms that are to him. He can, within his range, direct the elements, the storm, the fog, the thunder. He can command all the meaner things, the rat and the owl and the bat, the moth and the fox and the wolf. He can grow and become small, and he can at times vanish and become unknown. How then are we to begin our strife to destroy him? How shall we find his where, and having found it, can we destroy? My friends, this is such. It is a terrible task that we undertake, and there may be consequence to make the brave shudder. For if we fail in this our fight, we must surely win. And then where end we? Life is nothings. I heed him not. But to fail here, it is not mere life or death. It is that we become as him, that we henceforth become foul things of the night like him, without heart or conscience, preying on the bodies and the souls of those whom we love best. To us forever are the gates of heaven shut, for who shall open them again for us? We go on, for all time apparent by all, a blot in the face of God's sunshine, an arrow in the side of him who died for man. But we are face to face with duty, and in such case we must shrink. For me, I say no. But then I am old, and life with his sunshine, his fair places, his song of birds, his music and his love lie far behind. You others are young. Some have seen sorrow, but there have been fair days yet in store. What say you?" Whilst he was speaking, Jonathan had taken my hand. I feared, so much, that the appalling nature of our danger was overcoming him, when I saw his hand stretch out. But it was life to me to feel his touch. So strong, so self-reliant, so resolute. A brave man's hand can speak for itself. It does not even need a woman's love to hear its music. When the professor had done speaking, my husband looked in my eyes, and I in his. There was no need for speaking between us. I answer for me and I myself. "Count me in, Professor," said Mr. Quincy Morris, laconically as usual. "I am with you," said Lord Godalming, "for Lucy's sake, if for no other reason." Dr. Seward simply nodded. The professor stood up, and after laying his golden crucifix on the table, held out his hand on the other side. I took his right, and Lord Galmering his left. Jonathan held my right, and with his left he stretched across to Mr. Morris. So we all took hands. Our solemn compact was made. I felt my heart icy cold, but it did not even occur to me to draw back. I felt we resumed our places. Dr. Van Helsing went on to a sort of cheerfulness which showed that the serious work had begun. It was to be taken as gravely and as business-like way as meant as any other transaction of life. Well, you know what we have to contend against, but we, too, are not without strength. We have on our side a power of combination, a power denied to the vampire kind. We have the resources of science. We are free to act and to think. And the hours of the day and the night are ours equally. In fact, so far as our powers extend, we are unfettered and we are free to use them. We have self-devotion in a cause, and to end the achieve which is not a selfish one. These things are such. Now let us see how far the general powers arrange us are restrict, and how the individual cannot. In fine, let us consider the limitations of the vampire in general, and of one of his in particular. All we have to go upon are traditions and superstitions. These do not at first appear much, when the matter is of life and death, nay, of one than either life or death. Yet we must be satisfied, in the first place because we have to be. No other means is in our control, and secondly, because after these things, tradition and superstition are everything. Does not the belief of vampires rest for others, though not, alas, for us on them? A year ago, which of us would have received such a possibility, in the midst of our scientific, skeptical, matter-of-fact 19th century? We even scoffed at belief that we saw justified under our own eyes. Take it, then, that the vampire, the belief in his limitations and his cure, are the rest of the moment on the same base. For, let me tell you, he is known everywhere that men have been. In old Greece, in old Rome, he flourished in Germany all over, in France, in India, even in the Cherusine, and in China. So far from us in all ways, there even he is, and the peoples fear him at this day. He have followed the wake of the berserker Islander, the devil-begotten Hun, the Slav, the Saxon, and the Magyar. So far, then, we have all we may act upon. And let me tell you that very much of the beliefs are justified by what we have seen in our own unhappy experience. The vampire live on, and cannot die by passing of time. He can flourish when that he fatten on bleed of the living. Even more, we have seen amongst us that he can grow younger, that his vital facilities grow strenuous, and seem as though they refresh themselves when his special pallium is plenty. But he cannot flourish without his diet. He eats not as others. Even friend Jonathan, who lived with him for weeks, did never see him eat. Never. He throws no shadow, he make the mirror no reflect, as again Jonathan observe. He has the strength of many in his hand, witness again Jonathan when he shut the door against the wolves, and when he help him with the diligence too. He can transform himself to a wolf, as we gather from the ship arrival at Whitby, when he tear open the dog. He can be as a bat, as Madam Mina saw him at the window at Whitby, and as friend Jonathan saw him fly from so near his house, and as my friend Quincy saw him at the window of Miss Lucy. He can come in mist which he creates. That noble ship's captain proved him of this. From this much we know. The distance he can make this mist is limited, and it can only be around himself. He come on moonlit rays as elemental dust, as again Jonathan saw those sisters in the castle of Dracula. He becomes so small, we ourselves saw Miss Lucy, ere she was at peace, slip through the hair-breadth space of the tomb door. He can, when once he find his way, come out from anything or into anything, no matter how close it be bound or even fused up with fire. Solder, as you call it. He can see in the dark. No small power this, in a world which is one half shut from the light. Alas, but hear me through. He can do all these things, yet he is not free. Nay, he is even more prisoner than the slave of the galley, that the madman in his cell. He cannot go where he lists. He who is not of nature has yet to obey some of nature's laws. Why, we know not. He may not enter anywhere at first unless there is someone of the household who bid him come, though afterwards he can come as he please. His power ceases, as all does of the evil things at the coming of the day. Only at certain times can he have limited freedom. If he be not in the place whither he is bound, he can only change himself at noon or the exact sunrise or sunset. These things we are told, and in this record of ours we have proof of inference. Thus, whereas he can do as he will within his limit, when he have his earth home, his coffin home, his hell home, the place unhallowed, as we saw when we went to the grave of the suicide at Whitby. Still, at other time he can only change when the time come. It is said, too, that he can only pass running water at the slack or the flood of the tide. Then there are things which so afflict him that he has no power, as the garlic that we know of, and for things sacred, as a symbol, like crucifix, that who amongst us even now we have to resolve. To them he is nothing, but in their presence he take place off and silent with respect. There are others too, which I shall tell you, lest in which seeking we may need them. The branch of wild rose on the coffin keep him that move not from it. A sacred bullet fired into the coffin kill him, so that he be true dead. And as for the stake through the heart, we know already of its peace, or cut off the head and giveth the rest. We have seen it with our eyes. Thus, when we find the habitation of this man that was, we can confine him to his coffin and destroy him, if we obey what we know. But he is clever. I have asked my friend Arminius of Budapest University to make his record, and, from all the means that are, he tell me of what he has been. He must indeed have been the vivold Dracula who won his name against the Turk, over the great river on the very frontier of Turkeyland. If it be so, then he was no common man, for in that time, for centuries after, he was spoken of as the cleverest and most cunning, as well as the bravest of the sons of the land beyond the forest. That mighty brain and that iron resolution went with him to the grave, and are even now arrayed against us. The Draculas were, says Arminius, a great and noble race, though now and again were sessions who were held to the convales to have dealings with the evil one. They learned his secrets in the Scholomance amongst the mountains over Lake Hermerstadt, where the devil claims the 10th scholar of his due, and the records are such words as Steroica, Witch, Mordog, and Pokol, Satan and Hell, and in one manuscript this very Dracula is spoken of as Vampire, which we all understand too well. There have been from the loins of this one very great men and good women, and their graves have been scarred from the earth where alone his foulness can dwell. For it is not the least of its terrors that this evil thing is rooted deep in all good. The soil barren of holy memories, it cannot rest.
Whilst they were talking, Mr. Morris was looking steadily at the window. He now got up quietly and went out of the room. There was a little pause, and then the professor went on.
Now we must settle what to do. We have much data here, and we must proceed to lay out our campaign. We know from an inquiry of Jonathan's that from the castle of Whitby came 50 boxes of earth, all that which were delivered at Carfax. We also know that at least some of these boxes have been removed. It seems to me that our first step should be to ascertain whether all the rest remain in the house beyond that wall where we look today, and whether any more have been removed. If the latter, we must trace.
Here we were interrupted by a startling whay. Outside the house there came a sound of a pistol shot. The glass of a window was shattered with a bullet, which ricocheting at the top of the embrasure and struck the far wall of the room. I am afraid at my own heart of the coward, for I shrieked out. The men all jumped to their feet. Lord Godalming flew over to the window and threw up the sash. As he did, we heard Mr. Morris's voice without. "Sir, I fear I must have alarmed you. I shall come in and tell you about it." A minute later he came in and said, "It was an idiotic thing of me to do, and I ask your pardon, Miss Harker, most sincerely. I fear I must have frightened you terribly. But the fact is that whilst the professor was talking, there came a big bat and sat on the window sill. I got out of such horror and damned brutes from the recent events that I could not stand them. And I went out to have a shot, and as I was been doing so late in the evenings whenever I see one. You used to laugh at me when I did it for them, Art."
Did you hit it? Asked Van Helsing.
"I don't know. I fancy not, for it flew away in the wood."
Without saying any more, he took a seat. The professor began to resume his statement. "We must trace each of these boxes, and when we are ready we must either capture or kill this monster in his lair, or we must, so to speak, sterilize the earth, so that none more can seek the safety in it. Thus, in the way we must find a way to end him in his form of man between the hours of noon and sunset, and so engage him when he is at his most weak. And now for you, Madamina. This night is the end until all be well. You are too precious to us to have such risk. When we part tonight, you must no more question. We shall tell you all in good time. We are men and are able to bear, but you must be our star and our hope, and we shall act all the more free that you are not in the danger, such as we are."
All the men, even Jonathan, seemed relieved, but it did not seem to me that they should be in grave danger, and perhaps lessen their safety, the strength being the best safety, through care of me, but their minds were made up, and though it was a bitter pill for me to swallow, I could say nothing save to accept their chivalrous care of me. Mr. Morris resumed the discussion. "There is no time to lose. I vote that we have a look at this house right away. Time is everything with him, and swift action on our part may save another victim."
I own that my heart began to fail me at this time when the action came so close. But I did not say anything, for I had a greater fear that if I appeared to drag or hindrance to their work, they may leave me out of their counsels altogether. They have now gone off to Carfax, with means to get into the house. Manlike, they have told me to go to bed and sleep, as if a woman in sleep with those she loves is in danger. I shall lie down and pretend to sleep, lest Jonathan be added anxiety about me when he returns.
1st October, 4 a.m. Just as we were about to leave the house, an urgent message was brought to me from Renfield to know that I would see him at once, and as he had something of the utmost importance to say to me. I told the messenger that I would say that I would attend to his wishes in the morning. I was just busy at the moment. The attendant added, "He seems very importunate, sir. I've never seen him so eager. I don't know but what, if you don't see him soon, he will have one of his violent fits." I knew the man would not have said this without some cause, so I said, "All right, I will go now." And I asked the others to wait a few minutes for me, as I had to go and see my patient. Take me with you, friends, John, said the professor. His case in your diary interests me much, and it had bearing, too, and now and again in our case. I should much like to see him, and especially when his mind is disturbed. I come also, said Lord Galbraith. Me too, said Quincy Morris. I nodded, and we all went down to the passage together. We found him in a state of considerable excitement, but far more rational in his speech and manner than I had ever seen him. There was an unusual understanding of himself, which was unlike anything I had ever met with a lunatic, and he took it for granted that his reasons would prevail with others entirely sane. We all four went into the room, and none of the others at first said anything. His request was that I would at once release him in the asylum and send him home. This was backed up with the arguments regarding the complete recovery, and I abducted his own existing sanity. I appeal it to your friends, he said. They will perhaps not mind sitting in judgment on my case. By the way, you have not introduced me. I was much astonished by the oddness in introducing the madman in the asylum. It did not strike me at the moment. And besides, there was a certain dignity in the man's manner, so much of the habits of equality, that I at once made an introduction. Lord Goldring, Professor Von Helsing, Mr. Quincy Morris of Texas, Mr. Renfield. Shook hands with each of them, and saying in turn, Lord Goldring, I had the honor of seconding your father at Wyndham. I grieve to know, by holding of your title, that he is no more. He was a man loved and honored by all who knew him, and in his youth was, I have heard, the inventor of a burnt rum punch, much promised on Derby night. Mr. Morris, you should be proud of your great state. Its reception into the Union was precedent by which many far-reaching effects hereafter, and when the pole and the tropics may hold allegiance as stars and stripes. The power of treaty may yet prove a vast engine of enlargement when the Monroe Doctrine takes its true place in the political fable. What shall any man say of his pleasure of meeting Van Helsing? Sir, I make no apology of dropping all forms of conventional prefix. When the individual has revolutionized therapeutics by his discovery of the continuous evolution of brain matter, conventional forms are unfitting, since they would seem to limit him in one of his class. You, gentlemen, who are by nationality, by heredity, and by the possession of natural gifts, are gifted to hold your respective places in an unmoving world. I take to witness that I am as sane as at least the majority of men who are in full possession of their liberties. And I am sure that you, Dr. Seward, humanitarian and meteorologist, as well as scientist, will deem it some moral duty to deal with me as one to consider the utter exceptional circumstances. He made his last appeal with a courtly air of conviction which was not without its own charm. I think we were all staggered. For my own part, I was under the conviction, despite my knowledge of the man's character and history, that his reason had been restored, and I felt under a strong impulse to tell him that I was satisfied to his sanity and would see about the necessary formalities of his release in the morning. I thought it better to wait, however, before making so grave a statement, for of old I knew the sudden changes in which his particular patient was liable. So I contented myself with making a general statement that he appeared so to be improving very rapidly, that I would have a longer chat with him in the morning, and would then see what I could do to the direction of meeting his wishes. This did not at all satisfy him, for he said quickly, But I fear, Dr. Seward, that you hardly apprehend my wish. I desire to go at once, here, now, this very hour, this very moment, if I may. Time presses, and our implied agreement with my oldest Satham and the essence of my contract. I am sure that it is only necessary to put before the admirable practitioner of Dr. Stewart so simple, yet so momentous a wish to ensure its fulfillment. He looked at me keenly, and seeing the negative on my face, turned to the others. Then scrutinized them closely. Not meeting any sufficient response, he went on. Is it possible that I have erred in my supposition? You have, I said frankly, but at the same time, as I felt brutally. There was a conditional pause, and then he said slowly, "Then I suppose I must shift my ground of request. Let me ask for this concession, boon, privilege, what you will. I am content to implore such a task on the personal grounds, but for the sake of others. I am not at liberty to give you the whole of my reasons, but you may, I assure you, take it from me that they are good ones, sound and unselfish, and springing from the highest sense of duty. Could you look, sir, into my heart? You would approve to the sentiments which animate me, nay, more, you would count me amongst the best and truest of your friends." Again he looked at us all keenly. I had growing conviction that suddenly change of his entire intellectual method was but yet another form to phase of his madness, and so determined to let him go on a little longer, knowing from his experience that he would, like all lunatics, give himself away at the end. Van Helsing was gazing at him with a look of utmost intensity, his bushy eyebrows almost meeting with the fixed concentration of his look. He said to Renfield in a tone which did not surprise me at the time, but only when I thought of it afterwards, for it was as one addressing an equal. "Come, sir, bethink yourself. You claim the privilege of reason in the highest degree, since you seek to impress us with your complete reasonability. You do this, whose sanity we have a reason to doubt, since you are not yet released from medical treatment for this very defect. If you will not help us in your effort to choose the wisest course, how can we perform the duty which you yourself put upon us? Be wise and help us, and if we shall aid you and achieve this wish." He still shook his head as he said, "Dr. Van Helsing, I have nothing to say. Your argument is complete, and if I were free to speak, I should not hesitate a moment. But I am not my own master in this matter. I can only ask you to trust me. If I am refused, the responsibility does not rest with me." I thought it was now time to end the scene, which was becoming too comically grave. So I went towards the door, simply saying, "Come, my friends, we have work to do. Good night." As, however, I got near the door, a new change came over the patient. He moved towards me so quickly that for a moment I feared that he was about to make another homicidal attack. My fears, however, were groundless, for he held up two hands imploringly and made his petition in a moving manner. As he saw that the very excess of his emotion was militating against him, or restoring us more to our old relations, he became more demonstrative. I glanced at Van Helsing and saw my conviction reflected in his eyes, so I became a little more fixed in my manner, if not more stern, and motioned to him that his efforts were unavailing. I had previously seen something of sane, constantly growing excitement in him, when he had to make his own requests of time at which he had thought much. Such, for instance, as when he wanted a cat, and when I prepared to see the collapse into the same sullen acquiescence of the occasion. My expectation was not realized, for when he found that his appeal would not be successful, he had gone into quite frantic condition. He threw himself on his knees and held up his hands, wringing them in plaintive supplication, and poured forth a torrent of entreaty, with the tears rolling down his cheeks and his whole face and form expressive of the deepest emotion. "Let me entreat you, Dr. Steward. I implore you. Let me out of this house at once. Send me away how you will, and where you will. Send keepers with me with whips and chains. Let them take me in the strait waistcoats, manacled leg irons, good as a goal. But let me go out of this. You don't know what you do by keeping me here. I am speaking from the depths of my heart, my very soul. You don't know whom you wrong, and how, or I may tell not. Woe is it me, may not tell. By all you hold sacred, by all you hold dear, by your love that is lost, by your hope that lives, for the sake of the Almighty, take me out of this and save my soul from guilt.
Can't you hear me, man? Can't you understand? Will you never learn? Don't you know that I am as sane as Ernest now? That I am no lunatic in a mad fit, but a sane man fighting for his soul? Oh, hear me, hear me! Let me go! Let me go!
I thought that the longer this went on, the wilder he would get, and so would bring on a fit. So I took him by the hand and raised him up. Come, I said sternly. No more of this. We've had quite enough already. Get to your bed and try to behave more discreetly. He suddenly stopped and looked at me more intently for serious moments. Then, without a word, he rose, and moving over, sat down on the side of his bed. The collapse had come, as on former occasions, just as I had expected. When I was leaving the room, last of our party, he said to me in a quiet, well-bred voice, You will, I trust, Dr. Seward, do me the justice to bear in mind later on that I did what I could to convince you tonight.